Several years ago, I had my Thorens on a shelf with limited access. In order to be able to get the dust cover off, I cut a hole in the back, as you can see here, and this way I was able to slightly elevate it and slide it off, and it worked well for a real long while. Now, as time has passed, I am seeing stress cracks develop. I see stress in the acrylic on the sides here, and even though this dust cover has been replaced on my main turntable, which is where it came from, I now have this rebuilt Thorens, and I decided instead of investing in a new dust cover, I would see if I could repair this and get a few more years use out of it. So that's where we're going to go with this video. When I first cut the hole in the dust cover, I believe, if I recall way back when, because it's a long time ago, I just simply used a cut-off wheel on a moto tool to cut it off, and what it did, unfortunately, I did it at a higher speed. High speed with acrylic and a cut-off disc is not the smartest thing to do. It sort of melts the plastic as it goes through, so I had a lot of nubs here and rough edges. And what I did before I did anything was I used I believe it's a stone wheel, to smooth everything off at low speed. I got it to a decent level, something I was happy with, and then I flame polished it, which is simply I used a butane torch and brought it just over the plastic and slowly moved it to the side, trying not to melt it too much. Basically, you're just sort of liquefying the surface as you move, and you got to keep it moving or you will ruin everything. So that's as far as we got here. I probably could have done more, but I thought it was enough. Now, I got a sheet of acrylic at Home Depot. My original goal was to put this on the inside, but what I missed was I cut it a little too long, figuring it would be out of sight this way on the margin, and it turned out if I put it in the way I was doing it, it would hit the plinth. So that wasn't going to work. I don't feel like cutting this again because I'm not a great acrylics person. I'm new to playing with this. As a matter of fact, this is my first real attempt at bonding acrylic. So I didn't want to cut it again, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on the outside, figuring it will fit right under the little ridge here. I'll even up with that, and it'll be good enough. I then may paint this with a clear smoke paint just to try and match it. Not sure I will do that yet, but we will give that a try. Now to cut this piece, this time I had learned something over the intervening years. I used a fiberglass cut-off disc at slow speed and slowly worked it in to cut this. I got my piece cut to the size I wanted. I now have, by the way, I left the plastic paper on when I was cutting it. I was able to cut it. The edges were relatively smooth already. I then flame polished them. And now I'm going to try and glue it in. Now here too, you can't just use any glue on acrylic because normal, polystyrene cements and cyanoacrylates will haze the plastic. So I didn't want that to happen, so I got an acrylic cement. This actually bonds the plastic to each other, and we'll see how that goes. Now the cement I'm going to use is Grip Weld-On number 4 fast set. It comes with a plastic dispenser with a needle tip. Once you have your piece in place and it's clamped the way you want it, you apply the liquid to the seam. Capillary action carries it into the seam, and the plastic is supposed to be welded together. I will be doing this in a second. I am not going to keep this on film since I think I want to pay attention to what I'm doing a little better. I'll show you when it's done, and in a couple minutes we'll know if we have a fiasco on our hands. Okay, I got the piece glued in. Okay, in some respects it went as expected, in other respects not as I would have liked. One, it's in good and solid. It's nice and squared off. Problems I encountered, and we'll go through this, so if you do something like this you have a better idea. Maybe you can avoid these problems. One, although I had a needle applicator, it flowed out quicker than I expected. This is a very non-viscous liquid, so you really got to be careful getting it out. The other problem, I should have smoothed the edges of my cutout better. There appeared to be a little ridge, and you can see I have a clear section here where the clamp was able to get things down, but here there's a bit of a bubbly area, and up here it could have bonded better. This should all be clear, and it's not. Okay, so we got that issue, and I'm not happy with that. What I'm thinking I will do there to make it look better is probably just paint this area off so it's not as obvious. We'll see. First thing I'm going to do is, you can see I had a little run here. I should have masked. I didn't think I would have the stuff flowing as much as it did. So next thing I'm going to do is try and polish these areas to see how that comes out. Now, for polishing, what I use is Novus, and they have a 3-step system. Okay, they have a heavy scratch remover, and then a lighter one, and then a cleaner and shiner. I had good luck. I did do this already on the turntable, but I didn't go as far as I thought I could because I knew I'd be putting this plastic piece in. Okay, I may also try some Meguiar's plastics to see how that works and see if that helps with some of these spots. So that's the next thing I'm going to do. I will be using my car buffer with this and foam pads. You know, it's certainly easier than doing it by hand, and I'm sure you know what that is. I'm not going to make you watch me do it. I don't know how long it's going to take to buff this out, but it's your standard auto buffer, and I use foam polishing pads that you know, I get on Amazon from Chemical Guys. So we'll be back, and at least the bonding worked. That hopefully will take the stress off the turntable, off the dust cover in that hinge area and the back, as well as the crack I showed you on the top. And we'll come back when it's polished up and see if we still have any issues. The dust cover is pretty much done for the moment. There are two things that I have left to do, and I will get to those in a minute. But first, nothing went as planned here. As you got a hint of in the previous clip, I should have smoothed off the edges of the cutout area better. I didn't think they'd be a hassle, but apparently they did. As you saw, when the cement dried, I had some voids, I had some decent areas, but overall the patch was solid. Not very cosmetic, but solid. So what we're going to do now is show you what I did, and the solution I came up with to make it more cosmetic was to paint a black stripe across the rear of the dust cover. It's not really visible from a distance. It makes the patch more cosmetic, and it looks like it'll work and get me some more use. I will probably repolish the plastic when it's all done, but the two things I have left to do: one, I want to wet sand the paint, which I use flat black, and coated that with a semi-gloss urethane for durability, and I need to wet sand the urethane as a final issue to just make sure everything has a nice satin finish and is smooth. I did sand between all coats of the paint, and that gave me a reasonable finish. I will also be adding, I will turn this around, I will also be adding hinge supports or hinge repairs. Since I've gone this far, I think the aluminum color will give a nice contrast to the black paint, and I brought the paint down to the hinge and left the hinge unpainted. So I think that will help the appearances there. And as we turn it around again to show you the back, and here we have the back of the unit. Okay, so the back of the dust cover is now black. It's presentable, and it doesn't want to focus properly. So let's try this. There we go. So I have a black back, and you really don't see it from the front. We'll go around to the third side. Okay, and as you see on this side, I have the hinge also. The paint masked off nicely and gave me a nice, roughly 1.5 inch stripe along the back. Certainly not uncosmetic. I guess the last view, let's just check the focus, is if we open it up, it's not a big deal. It's frankly just out of the view as it's open. The dust cover has some imperfections that probably won't polish out. Not the end of the world. If I really get tired of them, I can get a replacement, but didn't feel the expense was warranted here. It seems to have worked out decently. I think the total for this ran somewhere around $20-25 to patch it, for the glue, the acrylic, and I needed some wet dry sandpaper going up to 2000 grit for the sanding. You know, the plexiglass polishing stuff I had, that was no issue, and of course the auto polisher I had. So there you have it. You know, for what it's worth, just an idea. You know, and in this case, I feel it's good enough I can live with it for the time being. And I have my reconstructed turntable all set up and running, cartridge in place, and presentable. And I nearly forgot, here are a couple pictures from above. Hope you enjoyed.